Hola a todos, hello everyone. This is Los Comics Son Buenos, our first video in English with a wonderful guest, Professor Frederick Aldama. He's a comic book scholar. He has published books about comic books, also children's books, Las Aventuras de Chupacabra Charlie, that's also in English, The Adventures of Charlie Chupacabra, is it? I just want to ask you a couple of questions about your career as a comics scholar and basically a huge nerd about comics and stuff like that.
Thank you, Camila. It's really an honor to be here, and I love that you, during your work, the work that you're doing, and the energy that you bring into comics, and especially, Latin American, Mexican, Latino, U.S. comics.
Okay, thank you. So the first question I wanted to ask you is, when did you notice that this, what you do, is what you wanted to do professionally?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I was one of those maybe early comics people that was interested early in comics in a professional way, but because we were kind of out of early, as PhD students, only a few of us actually got out of PhD programs like Charles Hatfield, a couple of others. Only a handful actually, wrote books, straight away out of their dissertations. I was advised when I was at Stanford not to do the book on comics, to wait until I got tenure.
Oh, wow.
But your question is a good question because, yeah, I did want to write on comic books as a graduate student, like you and others are able to kind of more freely do today because of a lot of the kind of work that some of us have been doing. But it wasn't until 2006 that I was like, okay, I published, I don't know, 10 books or something. Now it's time to do the stuff on comics. And then, I did publish other scholarly books in other areas, in other, like Mexican cinema, other, Latinx pop cultural spaces. But my main drive was U.S. Latino comics.
Now you are at the University of Austin with the Latinx Pop Lab, which is a wonderful space to teach and to think about Latinx comics, and your students are just wonderful. I just wanted to, I just want you to tell us more about your work at Ohio State and then here in Austin.
Yeah, great. So actually, at the Ohio State University, there were a number of us in the English department. Jared Gardner's one of my colleagues there, and as you know, he's done a lot in comics. We also have the Billy Ireland there, the Cartoon Research Museum and Library. So as far as comics, there's a lot happening at the Ohio State University, and I feel like I was a big part of making that happen. That said, there wasn't. I mean, I was the only one doing anything to do with like BIPOC comics. And so even though we had comics going on, we had to make a special, effort to clear a space for both the scholarship on and also the invitation to and welcoming, clearing a welcoming space to BIPOC creatives at the Ohio State University. And we did. We had SoulCon, the Brown and Black and Indigenous Comics Expo, that also included a scholarly symposium. But and it was beautiful and wonderful, and I have nothing but good things to say about the Ohio State University. But at a certain moment in our careers, and when UT Austin asked if I would, basically jump ship and join them here, we have to think, gosh, maybe I've done enough in this institution, and maybe there's enough now of momentum in the things that I created that it can, live on after I step away from it. And I also, for a long time have been, my heart has been really wanting the nourishment of the Southwest and our Latino communities, and being close to the border, and all of the all the culture and the sounds and the smells and everything of being here in Texas, right? So when UT asked me, I said, yes, but I want a bunch of things, including the Latinx Pop Lab. And you've been there, and we were there this morning with our students, and gosh, what a I mean, for me, for someone on my side of things, it's not just about writing books, both creative and scholarly. It's also about creating these spaces of making knowledge, creating, bringing new generations and you and Arturo and our students right into a space where we can generate ideas and take something away.
Yeah, I want you to talk a little bit more about this process of creating spaces in academia to talk about comic, to discuss about comic and race, not just any comic topic, but comics and race.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, in some of my scholarly works, I've been very purposeful, all of my scholarly works on comics, very purposeful about bringing attention to all of the incredible vitality and energy coming out of the Latinx comics community, but also in general, also bringing attention to intersectional identities and through Latinx. So, LGBTQ plus and Latino comics and those voices and experiences and the importance of that being us being kind of providing a welcoming space for that, for the knowledge creating around those narratives as well. And our Black and Indigenous brothers and sisters, also needing to be in conversation with us, and us in conversation with them. As you know, in Colombia, Mexico, here in the United States, our communities, our families, there can be homophobia, there can be colorism, a willful kind of erasure of even family members that might not fit the mold, the traditional mold. So I think we can do in our, in the questions that we ask and the research that we generate and the books that we write, the articles, and also the books that we create creatively, like comics and kids' books, that can do a lot of really important work for us.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that good answer, like really wide answer. Okay, the next thing I wanted to ask you about was about the concept of Latinidades, or what it means to be a Latino, Latina, Latinx in the US. But first I wanted to make like a small reflection about my experience with this topic. And I think that I was like very super ignorant about this before, last semester. I'm not saying I know everything right now, but I think a class I had last semester opened my eyes in a way I was not expecting. Because for me it was when Americans or gringos say they're Latinos, it's they don't know what they're talking about. They're just fake Latinos. They don't even speak Spanish. Because for me, being Latina or Latinx was I'm from Latin America and I speak Spanish and I have lived here my whole life, and that was it. And it never occurred to me the different ways in which you can adopt this identity and what it means. And after that, and it's you've talked about this, many people talk about this, it's Latino people in American Latinos. It's our parents don't know Spanish because they were bullied and often beaten for speaking Spanish. It was a dirty language, or it was something we're not going to teach our children Spanish, because for us it was horrible to be talking Spanish and people being super aggressive about it. And it was a survival. It was we do this to survive, to give you a better chance in society, in a super racist society. So it will be great if you can talk about this.
Yeah, the pressures of assimilation in this country are very huge, and targeting us both in terms of how we look but also how we speak. And I remember when we moved here from Mexico, so my mom's Guatemalan Irish from LA, but when she was 18, she went down on her way to Guatemala City. She stopped in Mexico City and fell in love with the city and then fell in love with my dad.
Nice.
And when things didn't work out, she brought us back to California. I remember my first day, I was about 5 years old, was, going home crying because I was told not to speak that dirty Mexican. And then after that, even being punished when I did speak Spanish. So, my generation, but it also continues today,
Yep.
which is the sad thing, right? Mm-hmm. It's so sad. Tragedy. It's a tragedy, actually. And so what happens is a lot of us grow up with a certain amount of shame about our language and our identity as connected through language. And like me and many others, I had the opportunity in college to go back and, relearn Spanish. But there's still something very deep in that experience in me. It's a like deep trauma for me, and as it is for many. And so, for instance, when I did my Con Papa, my kids' book that just released about a month ago, I wrote it in Spanish and in English. And at first I did it because I thought, well, we need a bilingual kids' book. But then I realized I did it because it was a way of freeing myself of that trauma, built around the shame of language, shaming in and around language. It doesn't mean, though, as you know, as you experienced here, no matter our relationship to language, no matter our skin tone, our facial characteristics, our hair, we are representative of the spectrum of experiences that make up Latinidad, Latino-ness in this country. And I think one of the important things that I tell my students is to embrace and be confident about that identity. Nobody can tell you how you should be identifying. That is your right. And the second that you start to hesitate or waver, there can be a good productive hesitation where you think about things carefully, like colorism. Did I somehow internalize some of that, etc.? But when we are talking or feeling like, am I Latino? Am I Latino enough? I don't speak the language as fluently as my cousins in Mexico, they call me pocho, that kind of thing. The second we hesitate, the more the powers that want to divide us will be able to divide us. We need to recognize that we all have very different experiences because of how we sound and look and, in the world, but we need to come together and overcome those differences that people tell us are differences that should divide us. We need to be unified, right? And so move confidently in the world in the way that you self-identify. And sometimes it takes work to find that place. So that's how I would respond to that question.
Okay, thank you for that deep and important answer. So next thing I wanted to ask is, how is it different in academia, like now, the place you're right now, like not only like physically, but like what has changed since you were in college in the field?
Yeah, so when I was an undergraduate, we did read comics, but there was Watchmen and Mouse and Frank Miller. Mostly. We read them in English departments, here and there, but it was mostly literature, like alphabetic. Now, for instance, at UT Austin, they hired me to be the person that does Latino comics, so that's what I teach. I teach comic book media and identities. I teach intro to comic studies. I teach Latinx popular culture. Imagine that, like even 10 years ago, 15, years ago. So all the work that I do and that I do with others collectively, my students, my colleagues across the country, has made a very huge difference in the opportunities that students like yourself have right now in the field. And you're one of the people that you work with at University of Iowa and others. I mean, we do our work within our spaces, but we also very aware of our others, and collectively we open up all the doors and all the windows, throwing everything open. And today is a very different day than even 10 years ago.
Yeah, I can just barely imagine how it was for you when you started to I don't know, like open your way with Latinx Comics Studies, and it's like you got a nice nerve for your research, and that's like really big now. I mean, I knew it was big when it happened. Like what was it like?
2018.
Okay, like some years ago. But now after like all this, what I mentioned earlier with the, I don't know how having that class opened my eyes. I know it's like, okay, this is like really something really important. Okay, just to close our interview or to end it, I don't know if that was okay. Okay. I just wanted to ask you about the Colombian comic books I brought you. Like I brought some comics to show Frederick and his colleagues, and I don't know, like a general opinion on them.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought these, and I've had a little bit of a look at them. I also have one of my one that I want to get to here from Mexico, which is, as you know, the 43 that were murdered and disappeared. Yeah. So I think what we're seeing in so you're positioned beautifully, because in a way this is for me, my sense is that we are finally getting the venues, the space for our important stories, personal stories, but personal stories, there's a tradition of our personal stories reaching into the collective, right, in Latin America and Mexico, Colombia, because the second that we walk out our doors in places like, Colombia and Mexico and other Latin American countries, we are not allowed to be a singular self, right, in those spaces, because of histories and legacies of conflict, of colonization, post-colonization, governments that are exploitive, oppressive. We are constantly reminded that we are part of a collective. And what I think is remarkable about these is the way that they speak to the personal as a collective within the collective. And what I would say to this is that we need you, Camila, and your work, because we need the scholarship, not to validate it, but to show others, undergraduates, other graduate students, other scholars, that this is a really important area of storytelling. And we need the kind of work that you're doing to be able to enrich our understanding of what's happening in Colombia, in Latin America in general. So this is a really exciting time for me. It's also exciting for me to be here with you, because I know that it's a very understudied area, especially in English. And we need that work. We need that work everywhere in the world. We need that work in my classrooms.
Well, fortunately, I'm not the only one working on this, because that would be like a really big responsibility. But thank you for the faith. I'll try not to let you down. But as I said, I'm not the only one studying Colombian comics or Latin American comics. But I don't know, like meeting you in person and other scholars. I mean, having Ana Merino as my advisor back in Iowa, it's a wonderful experience because it's like, I mean, back in Colombia, I didn't know I could. I mean, I wanted to do something with comics, but I didn't know how far could I get with that. And in here, it's like another world filled with opportunities and many chances, and I'm just super grateful for that. It's really inspiring. I was really inspiring to be at the Texas A&M Latinx Consortium, like sharing with other grad students, undergrad students, whatever, people with similar interests who are doing like an incredible work. And yeah, I just wanted to end up the video saying thank you so much again. It's okay. Okay, nice. It's okay. Yeah, just thank you again, Frederick, for agreeing to this interview, for having us at your house, for showing us the University of Austin, everything, for the breakfast, for the salmon and veggies, everything. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Arturo, it's like a really good friend of mine. He's at the University of Iowa studying a Spanish creative writing master's degree. I don't know if I already said that, but he's wonderful. He's helping here today, so he's now part of Los Comics Son Buenos.
Hola.
Yeah. So okay, thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel. I hope I can make more videos in English. I think this went decently. Okay, just thank you, and nos vemos en otro video. Gracias.
Chao.
Gracias por ver nuestros videos. Si les gustó el canal, suscríbanse, activen la campanita para recibir notificaciones, comenten y compartan.